There are 11 million illegal immigrants in America. They have 300,000 babies a year. All of them automatically become U.S. citizens. But now, Donald Trump wants to change that with an executive order. Hi, welcome to America Uncovered. I'm your host, Chris Chappell. President Trump once again has people asking, can he do that? At the end of October, Trump sat down with Axios to talk about immigration, and he revealed he's thinking about ending birthright citizenship.
On immigration, some legal scholars believe you can get rid of birthright citizenship without changing the Constitution.
With an executive order.
Exactly.
Right.
Have you thought about that?
Yes.
Tell me more.
It was always told to me that you needed a constitutional amendment.
Right.
Guess
14th
what?
Amendment.
You don't.
You don't.
Number one, you don't need that. Number two,
I mean, that's in dispute.
You could definitely
that's very much in dispute.
Well, you can definitely do it with an act of Congress, but now they're saying I can do it just with an executive order. Now, how ridiculous. We're the only country in the world where a person comes in, has a baby, and the baby is essentially a citizen of the United States for 85 years with all of those benefits. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And it has to end.
Have you talked about that with council?
Yeah, I have.
So where in the process?
It's in the process. It'll happen. With an executive order. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah,
that's
it's
a very
exactly what I'm
interesting
talking about.
I didn't think anybody knew that but me. I thought I was the only one. Jonathan,
I've got a good guess. Good guess.
Impressed.
Oh, I feel like they really had a moment there. Birthright citizenship is something Trump spoke about on the campaign trail. But many Republican Party officials expressed concern that this issue could cost Republicans the Latino vote. So a lot of people thought Trump wouldn't bring it up again. But they forgot. Controversial is Donald Trump's middle name. Just kidding. His middle name is John. So, what is birthright citizenship? As it's interpreted now, it means any child born within the borders of the United States is automatically a U.S. citizen, including children born to parents who are in the country illegally, on a temporary visa, or as tourists. It comes from the 14th Amendment, which says, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. Obviously, anything to do with immigration creates a lot of strong feelings on both sides. Birthright citizenship has been challenged before, by both Democrats and Republicans. For clarity, the controversy here is not really about whether the children of immigrants should become U.S. citizens. It's been that way for a long time. The issue now is mainly about whether the children of illegal immigrants should. In 1993, Democratic Senator Harry Reid introduced this bill to limit birthright citizenship. At the time, he said, if you break our laws by entering this country... Wait, hold on. Is that Fox News? Fox News is quoting a Democrat to prove their point. It truly is an age of wonder. Anyway, Harry Reid said, if you break our laws by entering this country without permission and give birth to a child, we reward that child with U.S. citizenship and guarantee of full access to all public and social services this society provides. And that's a lot of services. That was 25 years ago, and Reid later changed his stance on birthright citizenship. But today, birthright citizenship is no less controversial. Omar Jadwat, director of the ACLU's Immigrants' Rights Project, wrote, the president cannot erase the Constitution with an executive order. This is a transparent and blatantly unconstitutional attempt to sow division and fan the flames of anti-immigrant hatred. While Democratic Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi released a statement that starts out talking about birthright citizenship and ends up attacking Republicans on health care. Now that is a seasoned politician. On the other side, Jessica Vaughn, the policy director at Center for Immigration Studies, said there are legitimate legal questions about how we have interpreted birthright citizenship in many different scenarios. And Republican Senator Marco Rubio said about Trump's announcement, everybody should take a deep breath. Let's take a deep breath here for a minute. Yeah, I don't feel any better. So let's go back to the 14th Amendment for a moment. Now, no one is arguing that if your parents are citizens or legal residents, you shouldn't get to be a citizen. Well, except for me. I think things should be run more like Starship Troopers, where you only get citizenship if you fight giant space bugs.
Join the mobile infantry and save the world. Service guarantees citizenship.
Things would be so much simpler if this were the only alien we were talking about. Anyway, it's this part of the 14th Amendment that's the sticking point, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. What does that mean? If you're born in the U.S., aren't you also subject to its laws? Isn't anyone in the United States, even an illegal immigrant, subject to U.S. laws? Isn't that just redundant? Well, this is where it gets complicated. The 14th Amendment was originally about granting citizenship to former slaves. Before the 14th Amendment, the 1857 Supreme Court ruling on the Dred Scott case had said people of African descent are not entitled to citizenship, regardless of where they were born or whether they were slaves or free. But one bloody Civil War later, the 14th Amendment was ratified, and that part of the Dred Scott ruling was overturned. The reason the phrase, "and subject to the jurisdiction thereof," was added to the 14th Amendment was thanks largely to Senator Jacob M. Howard. He argued that it wasn't redundant, but clarified the meaning of all persons born or naturalized in the United States. In other words, according to the senator, this will not, of course, include persons born in the United States who are foreigners, aliens, who belong to the families of ambassadors or foreign ministers accredited to the government of the United States, but will include every other class of persons. It settles the great question of citizenship and removes all doubt as to what persons are or are not citizens of the United States. Clearly, it did not remove all doubt. But Senator Howard's main purpose was to exclude American Indians, who were subject to the jurisdiction of their tribe and therefore not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. Don't you love legalese? So, in its original interpretation, the 14th Amendment excluded a lot of people. That interpretation did not last forever, though, but not because of concerns from Indians or even African Americans. It was actually a Chinese man, Wong Kim Ark. At the time, Chinese people weren't allowed to become U.S. citizens because of the Chinese Exclusion Act. In an 1898 U.S. Supreme Court case, Wong argued that since he was born in the U.S. and his parents had permanent domicile, he was entitled to citizenship. In a 6-2 ruling, the Supreme Court agreed with him. Then, in 1924, Congress passed the Indian Citizenship Act, granting citizenship to all American Indians. And in 1982, using the United States v. Wong Kim Ark as a precedent, the Supreme Court ruled on the case of Plyler v. Doe. Texas had passed a state law denying funding to K-12 schools for educating children of illegal immigrants. The Supreme Court struck it down. The majority opinion wrote that the law was unfair because children of illegal immigrants didn't have a choice about whether to be in the country. In addition, the judges were concerned that denying these kids an education would lead to the creation and perpetuation of a subclass of illiterates within our boundaries, surely adding to the problems and costs of unemployment, welfare, and crime. Now, however you feel about that, the case only dealt with a very specific situation: school funding. According to the Congressional Research Service, the courts apparently have never ruled on the specific issues of whether the native-born children of unauthorized aliens, as opposed to the child of lawfully present aliens, may be a U.S. citizen. So President Trump's challenge to birthright citizenship could result in exactly that clarification. As the libertarian think tank, the Cato Institute, points out, illegal aliens and their children can be prosecuted and convicted under U.S. law, unlike diplomats or foreign invaders, and the countries of origin can hardly make a jurisdictional claim on kids born in America. But that is still a relatively recent interpretation. John Eastman, a constitutional scholar and director of Chapman University's Center for Constitutional Jurisprudence, told Axios, until the 1960s, the 14th Amendment was never applied to undocumented or temporary immigrants. And, he told the Epoch Times, near as I have been able to determine, a bureaucrat changed the form in the passport office to exclude questions about a child's paternal status at his birth. That had previously been a key part of the passport application, which required proof of citizenship. But really, how big an issue is this? Are there that many children of illegal immigrants who are getting automatic citizenship? Well, according to the Pew Research Center, there were tens of thousands each year in the 80s, eventually reaching a peak of 370,000 a year in 2007. It's gone down a little bit since then. So under the current policy, these 200,000 to 300,000 children born each year are immediately entitled to the same rights as any other U.S. citizen. They potentially get food assistance and other welfare benefits that can be collected on their behalf by their parents, even though the parents are illegal immigrants. Many of the welfare costs associated with illegal immigration, therefore, are due to the current birthright citizenship policy. In 2012, that meant that 62% of illegal immigrant-headed households were on some form of welfare. It's greater in some states. In 2013, according to then Los Angeles County Supervisor Michael D. Antonovich, the total cost for illegal immigrants to county taxpayers exceeds $1.6 billion a year. Then there's the issue of birth tourism. People visiting the U.S. just to have their kids here. More on that after this short commercial break. Birth tourism. As the Center for Immigration Studies says, an entire industry of birth tourism has been created, and the phenomenon of pregnant women traveling legally to the United States specifically for the purpose of giving birth on U.S. soil has grown largely without any debate in Congress or the consent of the public. Birth tourism has become a big business from Russia, China, even countries like Nigeria. There are no clear statistics on how much birth tourism there is, and it's something the U.S. government is trying to stop. Birthright citizenship can have far-reaching consequences. At 21 years old, a U.S. citizen can sponsor their extended family, who can then in turn sponsor their extended family to immigrate, in some cases even if their family had already lived in the U.S. illegally. Of course, that's 2 decades from now, so it'll be someone else's problem. Of course, that's what they said 20 years ago. The question today is, can Trump change all this with an executive order? Well, he can't change the Constitution with one. In order to make a constitutional amendment, it requires support from 2/3 of Congress as well as ratification from 3/4 of states. But Trump might not need a constitutional amendment. According to Michael Anton, a former spokesman for Trump's National Security Council, an executive order could specify to federal agencies that the children of non-citizens are not citizens. And according to the Heritage Foundation, the president has the constitutional authority to direct executive agencies to act in accordance with the original meaning of the Citizenship Clause, and to direct agencies to issue passports, social security numbers, etc., only to those whose status as citizens is clear under the current law. Of course, whatever Trump does will almost certainly be challenged in court, and eventually it may go to the U.S. Supreme Court. A Supreme Court that currently has a 5-4 conservative lead with 2 justices appointed by President Trump. Of course, there's another possibility. Senate Republican Lindsey Graham has said he will also introduce legislation to end birthright citizenship to illegal immigrants. Congress has already set a precedent that they can interpret who falls under the 14th Amendment. That's what they did with the Indian Citizenship Act of 1924. So that's another way the Trump administration could end birthright citizenship for illegal immigrants without changing the Constitution. Of course, a congressional decision could always get sent to the Supreme Court as well, but however it happens, it looks like a strong possibility we will be seeing some new, or at least clearer, rules about who counts as subject to the jurisdiction thereof. How does the rest of the world treat birthright citizenship? Only about 30 countries have it. Almost all of them are in the Western Hemisphere. Which makes sense, considering that a few hundred years ago, these are the countries that were being populated by European colonists. And now, let's conveniently gloss over that part of history. But the general trend over the last few decades has been for countries to get rid of birthright citizenship. Australia, Ireland, India, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, Malta, and the Dominican Republic have all changed their laws, often for the reasons mentioned above. The main arguments people have made for getting rid of birthright citizenship for illegal immigrants are that it encourages more people to immigrate illegally, and it also uses up taxpayer resources to help families that broke the country's laws from the very beginning. On the other hand, while getting rid of birthright citizenship will discourage some people from coming to the U.S. just to have kids, it can also lead to other problems. For example, it could lead to a permanent underclass in society, the people who are descended from illegal immigrants who don't have any opportunities to join mainstream society. This has historically been a problem in other countries, where these non-citizen youths are more prone to crime and extreme political ideologies like communism. That's one reason the libertarian Cato Institute actually supports birthright citizenship. That and its ability to help assimilate immigrants into American society. Some people consider it unfair to punish children for the crimes of their parents, while others consider it unfair to give illegal immigrants the same automatic rights and benefits as legal residents. Besides, getting rid of birthright citizenship probably won't make very many of the 11 million illegal immigrants currently in the U.S. return to their home countries. As with so many issues in this country, liberals and conservatives aren't necessarily arguing about the same thing. From Obama to Trump, leaders on both sides have said we need to stop illegal immigration. But will ending birthright citizenship do that? And are the additional problems it might create worth it? What do you think? Leave your comments below. And remember, this show requires a lot of research to produce. So please, contribute to America Uncovered on the crowdfunding website Patreon. Go to patreon.com/AmericaUncovered to learn more. Once again, I'm your host, Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.